What's up everyone, this is Jalay. Welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm gonna show you guys how to overclock a graphics card. Make sure you stick around to the end of this video to see one really simple trick which makes overclocking super easy. Anyway, let's see how it's done. So for the purpose of this video, I will be overclocking my Gigabyte RTX 2070 Super Gaming OC 3x8G, which is basically a triple fan version of 2070 Super. I have been using this card since quite a while now, and I can say that this is a monster graphics card. I have made a separate video unboxing this card. You can check it out by clicking on the iCard or the link in the description. Now let's talk about what you need to overclock a graphics card. For this video, I'm gonna be using a program called MSI Afterburner. You can go to this URL to get a free copy of your own. It also comes with a feature called OC Scanner, which I will show you later. But just to give you a brief idea, it makes overclocking just one click process. Once you have downloaded it, double click the zip file, find the executable file and run it to install the program. On the third step of installation wizard, you will be asked to install an additional program which is called RivaTuner Statistics Server, which is basically a monitoring program. For the purpose of this video, we don't need it, so feel free to uncheck the checkbox and proceed further. Once the installation is done, let's launch the program and see what it looks like. The left and right side meters show the real-time analytics of your graphics card, and in the middle, we get to play with these different controllers to try and find stable overclock settings. Now, to identify the performance of your graphics card, we need some sort of benchmarking program. There are many available like Unigine Heaven Benchmark, FurMark, 3D Marks and so on, but for the purpose of this video, I will be using Unigine Heaven Benchmark 4.0. Now that we have all the necessary programs available on the system, let's first find out the benchmark score of this graphics card with stock settings so that we can compare it with the after overclocking benchmarks. This will probably take 4 to 5 minutes, so I will see you guys once it's done. So for the stock configuration, we got the total score of 4789 with the average FPS of 190, which is great. The minimum FPS is 27.6 and the maximum FPS is 403.5. Now that we know how this card performs on the stock configuration and we have the numbers to compare with, let's start tweaking the settings in the MSI Afterburner and see how far we can take this card. The first thing you need to know is that out of all the controllers available in the MSI Afterburner, only the core clock and memory clock controllers are actually being used to overclock the card. The power limit, temperature limit and the core voltage controller are used to allow your card to be overclocked. But as you can see, the core voltage controller is disabled by default. We need to enable it so that the graphics card can utilize more voltage when overclocked. To enable it, go to the settings and check these two checkboxes, apply and restart the program. Once restarted, you will see that the core voltage controller is now enabled. Now what you want to do is drag the controller all the way to the right, maxing it out. Along with that, max out the power limit and temperature limit as well. Don't worry about maxing out these options as they are the safe max limits provided by the graphics card manufacturer. You may also want to enable the user-defined fan control and decide your own fan curve by going to the settings once again. Here I have changed it to keep spinning at 40% speed till the temperature of 40 degrees Celsius and then start spinning faster as the temperature increases by setting this flat curve. If you don't want to do that, you can just leave it to auto. Now let's finally start finding the stable overclocking configuration both for the core clock and the memory clock. Before making any changes, start the Heaven benchmark once again, click the run button and leave it as it is. This will keep running until you explicitly stop it, which makes it my favorite tool for the GPU overclocking as you can make changes in the MSI Afterburner and test in real time. You can see some information on the top and bottom right corners to identify if the changes are impacted. While it is running, let's start tweaking the core clock. The general rule of thumb is to increase the core clock by plus 40 MHz on every step. So let's do that and see if you notice any issues in the Heaven benchmark like blue or black screen or the program getting crashed. If everything looks stable, increase by plus 40 MHz, making it plus 80 MHz this time and observe the Heaven benchmark once again. Repeat the process until you find a number which is too high for your card, making it unstable. For me, as you see here, when I set the core clock to plus 160 MHz, the Heaven benchmark crashed, which means plus 160 is too high for my card. For the purpose of this video, I have set it back to plus 120, which was stable, but now you can basically perform the incrementals of plus 5 MHz and find the best core clock configuration. Memory clock speed generally goes very far, so you can perform the incrementals of plus 100 MHz and see if it is stable in the Heaven benchmark and basically repeat the same process. For me, everything was fine till plus 1100 MHz, but when I set it to plus 1200 MHz, I started noticing that the Heaven benchmark started hanging, which indicates that the plus 1200 MHz is just too much for my card, and when I set it back to plus 1100 MHz, Heaven benchmark was back to normal. Again, for the purpose of this video, I will settle down for these settings, but you can even go further with smaller incremental steps from now on. Anyway, so for my card, I found it stable on plus 120 MHz core clock and plus 1100 MHz memory clock configuration. Now let's run the Heaven benchmark once again and see how much we gained from overclocking. So after overclocking, we got the total score of 5265 with the average FPS of 209, which is amazing. The minimum FPS is 25.3 and the maximum FPS is 403.5. Overall, overclocking gave us an average FPS hike of 19 and the total score hike of 476, giving us around 10% more performance. Once again, we maxed out the voltage, power and the temperature limits, defined a custom fan curve and performed a very lengthy process of overclocking the core clock and the memory clock speeds, ultimately giving us the free 10% extra performance out of our graphics card. Yes, I agree, this is a very lengthy and time-consuming process, but hold on. MSI Afterburner has a cool new feature which makes core clock overclocking as easy as clicking just one button. So what you want to do is click on this OC button right beside the core clock controller or directly click on the OC button on the top left of the MSI Afterburner and it will open up this utility window with which you can basically test your custom configuration or find a custom configuration for your core clock. Now all you have to do is click on the scan button and it will basically perform the exact same incremental and decremental steps that we have performed earlier over the course of 4 long-running scanning points. As you see here, the scanning is checking if the core clock of plus 105 MHz is stable or not. It found it stable, so now it is checking for the plus 120 MHz. So basically the same steps as ours. Let it run and see what configuration it finds out. It took more than 7 minutes for the scanner to find the best stable settings, and at the end of 4 scanning points, the scanner found that plus 67 MHz core clock speed is the most stable configuration for my graphics card and set it as curved on the core clock controller. If you are a beginner, OC scanner is the safe bet for you. Unfortunately, OC scanner isn't available for the memory clock at the moment, so you will have to resort to the manual process for that. The last thing you need to do is to save the configuration in one of these profiles and make sure that your graphics card always run on these configuration by going to the settings and allowing MSI Afterburner to run on the Windows startup, which will basically apply this configuration to your graphics card every time you turn on the computer. Alternatively, you can also click on the startup button which does the same thing. To conclude this video, overclocking is a simple and lengthy process, but at the end, you get extra performance out of your graphics card. I was able to draw 10% more performance out of my 2070 Super. How much did you gain? Let me know in the comment section down below. Anyway, that's been it. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more PC related content.